Hello everyone. We're about 10 months away at this point from the PlayStation 5 launching. A lot of news has been coming out pretty much every day at this point, and I think it's pretty important to look at the studios that they have in-house and kind of see what each of them are doing at this point. That's kind of why you buy a system at launch, is because you know they have all of these studios ready to put all these amazing games out, and they've really done a good job over the last 2 or 3 years. I know that they've hit a lot over the last few years. Horizon Zero Dawn, God of War, Spider-Man. They've had a really good end to this generation, and I think moving forward they probably are going to build on that. So let's just go ahead and jump into the Japan studios. The first Japan studio, which is probably their biggest studio or studios, is Japan Studio. Their last game that they put out was Everybody's Golf VR. That came out around May last year, so it's been a little bit for long. It's kind of longer than they normally take to put out games, because they put out at least one every year. They put out The Last Guardian and Knack 2. Knack, the first one, was a launch title for the PlayStation 4, so you kind of expect them to come with some type of new IP. Probably, I doubt there's going to be a Knack 3. I don't think that's going to be moving a lot of consoles at launch, but you never know. I really think that they're going to have games around launch. Probably not a AAA, because it does take them a while to put out their AAAs, like The Last Guardian, obviously. But they should have pretty solid games coming out around launch. And if you move to the second Japan studio, Polyphony, that's a difficult word to say, but they pretty much are the racing game studio. They put out Gran Turismo, they put out Gran Turismo Sport not too long ago, and they're still working on that currently. It's pretty much been confirmed that that's the next game that they're going to make, is whatever the next Gran Turismo is going to be called. Kind of never know what the name's going to be. The last one was Sport. They might go back to numbers, but you never know about them. So that pretty much covers Japan. I think around the next few years, they're going to put out at least a racing game probably at launch, is my guess. And then Japan Studios will come with something around launch, and then probably a bigger game in the next year or two after that. If you go down to Europe, which they have a lot at this point, I would say the biggest studio at the moment would be Guerrilla Games. I don't think this is really what people used to look at when it came to the really big Sony studios. They used to be known for Killzone, and it was kind of always second fiddle to a lot of the other shooters that were available on PlayStation, even though it was a first-party game, such as Battlefield and Call of Duty. But I think that they're finally hitting a stride. They've moved away from that, and Horizon Zero Dawn was really their breakout game that they've had. They've had a lot of games in the past, but it's never been to that level. Rumors are that they are working on Horizon Zero Dawn 2, which should come around launch, if not launch day. I think if that is the launch day game, then they're pretty well set moving forward for the PlayStation 5. And then also a multiplayer shooter has actually been talked about a lot too, so I would be looking for those two games from that studio. The next two are newer studios that they've put together coming out of England, in London and Manchester. The London studio put out Blood and Truth this year, which actually reviewed pretty well for what it is. But the Manchester studio is actually a newer studio that has not actually released a game yet. It's rumored that they're working on a AAA level game, but you never know. I think that for the London studio, that they'll continue putting out VR games for the time being, and I think that's what they'll probably put out sometime around launch or the next year or two after launch. Moving on to Manchester, yeah, I'm pretty much just expecting that to be a AAA game, kind of around the lines of Days Gone, even though that's Bend. I think that would really put them in a good situation. They'd have a VR game that they could showcase, and then they'd have Manchester coming out with a new game probably around 2021 or 22. Moving along, one of the studios that I always looked at as being pretty big when it came to the Sony studios after they bought them was Media Molecule. I really liked Little Big Planet 1 and 2. Not the biggest fan of the third one, even though they did not make it. They actually are putting out Dreams. This is one of the, I think 2 or 3 first-party games that have been confirmed for 2019. That's coming out on Valentine's Day. So that's pretty exciting. Moving forward, I really think that they're going to try to focus on Dreams. I highly doubt they're going to really be focused on Little Big Planet anymore. That's kind of a franchise that probably will be pushed to another studio, probably a smaller studio like it was before. But yeah, in the foreseeable future, I would guess Dreams would be moved over to the PlayStation 5. All PS4 games are going to be backwards compatible. So I think that's probably what they're going to focus on, and maybe publishing some of the games that are in Dreams, which is what they've said in the past. So that would be pretty exciting to see if we could get a few unknown developers making games in Dreams and maybe releasing on the PlayStation Store. So the rest of the PlayStation studios are actually set in North America. And the most recent release from the North American studios was Days Gone, which was one of the big PlayStation games from 2019. Days Gone did okay, I guess critically, but commercially it actually sold pretty well, more than I think a lot of people would think it did. But we don't really know what's happening with that studio currently. Most likely, I know that Days Gone ended on a cliffhanger, so I would guess that Days Gone 2 is probably what they're going to be working on next. I would not expect to see that until at least 2023, maybe 2024 earlier in the year, like the first Days Gone came out. That would give them 4 years, 3 to 4 years, which is about a normal timeline, especially for a sequel. And then we move on to their next really big studio that they just acquired, which was Insomniac. They just put out Spider-Man. And in the past, I guess for this generation, they put out Sunset Overdrive on the Xbox, and now it's on PC. And Ratchet and Clank for the PlayStation. So the last 2 of their last 3 games have been for Sony, and then other for Microsoft. So you kind of can see why they decided to go ahead and jump on that. Recently, they've also been working on virtual reality games. I know that they've put quite a few out on PC. I'm not sure if they're on PlayStation or not, but I would expect most likely Spider-Man 2 to be what they're working on. I'm pretty sure they're not going to miss out on that opportunity. Let's see, it was 2018, so for a sequel, I could see it coming out in 2021, maybe early-ish 2022, even though that would be a really big game, and they most likely launch that in the fall. So that's kind of when I would be expecting some of the bigger games for the PlayStation 5 to start coming out. So you'd see that along with a few other things really hitting at around that time. And then if we move to the biggest studio, and at least in my opinion, for Sony, which would be Naughty Dog, the last game they put out was actually Uncharted 4. That game actually really did well when it came out. I'm pretty sure it was the best Uncharted game out of all of the Uncharted games, but I know that they are currently finishing up The Last of Us Part 2, which is coming out May 29th, so another 4 or 5 months before that comes out. And then they're going to move on to a new IP, which is what I think that Sony really probably doesn't want them to. I think they probably want another Uncharted, but I just think Naughty Dog is kind of done with that IP in general. As we move on, we'll kind of see another studio has been rumored to be working on a new Uncharted game. But if we look at it, I think their new IP will be probably around 2023, 2024. I know that The Last of Us Part 2 will probably be upgraded a little bit like The Last of Us did when it came to PlayStation 4. So that's kind of what I would be looking at. So we're down to our last 3. Pixel Opus actually is the next one, which is a smaller studio, and they've actually released 2 games at this point, Concrete Genie and Entwined. These 2 games have been on the smaller side. Concrete Genie was definitely a step up for them, and it actually was a pretty good game from what I played. I played through the whole thing, and I thought it was an interesting game, really colorful game, but I don't really expect anything from them for at least 2 years, probably. It's a small team, and they definitely don't have time at this point to be pushing for anything at launch. So I think around 2023, 2024, they might come with a slightly bigger game than the other 2 games they have, and it would be pretty interesting to see. I think they're an interesting team that really is on the upswing for Sony. And then we move on to probably the most boring historically studio from Sony, which is San Diego Studios, mostly known for MLB The Show. The last game is obviously MLB The Show 19, and then MLB The Show 20 is going to be coming out in March, like it does every single year. But they've actually been rumored to be working on the next Uncharted game instead of Naughty Dog, so I would expect quite something interesting from them. I think that them moving MLB The Show over to new hardware such as the Xbox or the PC would really be interesting to see. I think they probably had to do that because MLB was pushing them to do that. They didn't want it to be on one platform. There's baseball fans everywhere. Moving it to the PC and Xbox, I don't think necessarily hurts Sony that much, and it should be pretty interesting to see that happen. And then I think the Uncharted game they're working on, it's really hard to guess because they could have been working on this for a while. I would probably say this could be a really early PlayStation 5 game. I would say, if I had to guess, probably in the first 18 months that game will come out. Probably not at launch. I think that Horizon Zero Dawn is going to be that launch game that really pushes the console sales at first. So that's pretty much what I'm expecting. And then we have Santa Monica Studios, which just released God of War in 2018. They're pretty much set to be making the next God of War. Probably be named God of War 2, I would assume, because this is a new remake of the series. Kind of. I know that Kratos is the same Kratos. He just kind of moved from Greece over to Norse mythology. I'd kind of expect God of War 2 to be around 2021, 2022. That would give them 3 or 4 years, and it would really be one of the bigger games for the first few years for the PlayStation 5. And then we're down to our last game, or not game, studio, Sucker Punch, which is actually probably the studio we know the most about other than maybe Naughty Dog. They're putting out Ghost of Tsushima this year. They said summer, so I'm expecting that to come out and then move over to the PlayStation 5. And that really is all we know about the studio at the moment. They're known for Infamous, but I doubt they're going to be going back to that. But Ghost of Tsushima should hit pretty hard. It's one of the 2 big Sony exclusives for this year, so that's what I would be expecting from them in the next year or 2. Probably going to be a while before we hear from them. But yeah, that's kind of a whole picture of what Sony's looking like right now. I think that moving forward, they're in pretty good position. I would expect them to acquire a few new studios. I know that Xbox has acquired 5 or more at this point, so them acquiring a few more would really pad their lineup. I think that would, moving forward, I could see PlayStation continuing their dominance, but you never know. Maybe they've started a Game Pass service of their own, and these games all come out on that. I think that's what a lot of people would really like to see. Thank you all for watching, and this has really been an interesting time right now. 2020 should be really big for PlayStation, along with all of the brands. Nintendo's kind of hitting its stride right now, and Xbox is going to be launching a new console with it, with the PlayStation 5, so it should be a really fun year. I guess let me know what you think, and let me know what games you're excited for from all of these, and I'll see you all later.